So, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Remote Work Wednesday on behalf of the Remote Online Initiative and the K-State Research and Extension Community Vitality Team. I'm Ron Wilson, Director of the Huck Boyd Institute for Rural Development with K-State Extension Community Vitality. Thanks to Deborah Cole, who's on with us. She's State Specialist and Program Leader Coordinator for the K-State Extension Community Vitality Team. Today's call is a project of the Remote Online Initiative, as you see on your screen. KansasRemoteWork.com is the website. This project offers month-long online classes that enable participants to become trained and certified as a remote worker or a remote work team leader or leader of a hybrid team. Then there's free Zoom calls, an outgrowth of that. It's on the second Wednesday of each month for anyone who's interested in remote work. And next month, Cody Beasley will be our speaker. He was part of a entirely remote business that they started from scratch, and will have some good tips for us. So that'll be on September 10. The goal of this is simply to learn about the opportunities and challenges of remote and hybrid work for those who choose to use it. So I need to tell you that on June 26th, I attended the Connecting Entrepreneurials Conference in Kingman. Excellent conference. Went in this big meeting room. There were more than 100 people in the room, and I randomly plopped down at a table where there was an open seat, started a conversation with the young guy at the table, and it turned out to be our speaker today. I learned that he was a software developer professionally, that he relocated from the West Coast to the Southwest to Kingman, Kansas, and was working remotely. And so I asked him about his experience. Next thing I'm asking him, would you speak on Remote Work Wednesday? So he probably wishes I'd sat down at a different table. But great conversations, great insights. And he's going to talk about his journey from Bend, Oregon, as I recall, to Las Vegas, to Phoenix, and now to Kingman, Kansas. We've asked Mike to share his experience as a software developer and share his progression, that is, from on-site to rural remote work in Kansas. So, Mike, please, the floor is yours. We welcome your comments.
Thanks, Ron. I guess I'll just give a little overview of how I ended up here. It's been a little bit of a journey, as you said. I started off, I grew up on the West Coast in Oregon. I went to college, got out, eventually landed in a postgraduate program to become a software developer. Went through that, came out, and then I ended up working as a software dev on site, full-time, regular jobs for about 5 years. And that worked pretty good. A variety of different companies. I ended up having to relocate to the Southwest. That's how I ended up in eventually Las Vegas. For the majority of the time, there were few jobs up in Portland, Oregon. So moving down there, I worked at a company for several years, and then eventually I left to do some other things, but they kept me on as a consultant. So I ended up being a remote consultant for that company. And so I sort of fell into it. They wanted me to work as much as possible, and I could work whenever I wanted, wherever I wanted. Occasionally I would need to go visit on site to talk about projects and work with stuff like that. But it worked pretty good because I transitioned from, I was able to build trust. I was able to prove that I had a skill set that they were in need of, and then I was able to transition that to working remotely. I ended up going out and looking for other projects and ended up being a full-time or basically a software consultant for roughly 13 years. Very little marketing, just doing a decent job. People pass your name along from project to project. And it was mostly about 3 or 4 different companies in different industries that I worked with most of the time. That was never ever super stable. Being a consultant is always an up and down process of will you find a project for the next couple of months. Generally, projects would last about 3 months or so. So eventually I relocated for actually family reasons. I ended up moving down to Arizona. I found started right back into doing what I did before. I found a client, did a couple projects for them. They were very happy, and they were like, "Hey, why don't you come work for us full time?" So I was then back into the on-site. Had to get dressed, go to the office every day. That was in Arizona, and that's with Transaction Warehouse, who I still work for now. And they're an excellent company. And but COVID came along. We eventually started working from home during COVID, and I took that opportunity to move to Kansas because just a variety of reasons for quality of life and the ability to um, just have a little bit easier life and not be so hot during the summers out in Arizona. And so I was able to move out here. I was able to keep the same job. They would like me back in the office maybe, but given the nature of things, you know, um, I've continued to work, and even this morning I was working on stuff. So that's kind of a rough overview of my journey. As far as consistent, or like I was looking for themes of how I was able to maybe get into some sort of work remotely. And I guess it was um, actually proving some value or building comfort with whoever, whatever company that might be, or whatever person in that company it might be. And then once they trust you and they know that they can depend on you to actually do something and accomplish the work sort of independently, they're then they're much more willing to have someone remote. So I would say kind of building some trust, and maybe that is starting a job that's on site, but then eventually, issues, family issues or life issues come up, you're forced to move, and oftentimes they'll keep you as a full-time employee. So that's kind of the story of both of um, my transitions from an on-site employee to a remote employee. Was that I was already working, they were already comfortable, they already knew that I got the work done, and then all they cared about was that the work got done afterwards. And they were more than, I mean, I consulted with the company that I originally was a full-time employee with. They were in the trade show industry, being in Las Vegas. I consulted with them right up until 2018 when I moved. So, you know, over a decade. And then the one that I'm with now, I started in 2019 or 2018. I was consulting with them in 2019. I started full time, and we're a very small company. The prior companies were larger. They were larger corporations that I worked with, but this one's a much more smaller focused company. And so I would say build trust. Probably working on site. I think it's very tough for someone to hire a fully remote person right from the beginning. You're going to end up more in there's going to be a million applicants, but if you can somehow maybe go in even just a couple days a week and build that relationship, build that, and then transition to a more remote situation. And I still end up for my current job, I end up going back a couple times a year to Arizona for on-site. It works good. I've got family there, so I fly in to visit the family. I also work a week there generally a couple times a year. So, and my standard work days are I get up, I walk my dog, drink some coffee, have breakfast or coffee and croissant, and uh, then I get the day started, take lunch, finish the day up generally about 5. And it's really beneficial working fully remote. If I had to be into the office a couple times per week, if it was one of those hybrid positions, it would be a much tougher situation because then I would have to leave, be off site, have to have somebody to watch my dog, and it's a long, um, you know, if I, for instance, if I was, I'm in Kingman, so I'm about an hour away from Wichita. If I was to have to drive to Wichita a couple times a week, once or twice a week, would be a little bit tough to do a hybrid type of work situation. So fully remote is hugely beneficial. It gives you that you can make a full break and move wherever you can move close to family or as long as you can handle the time zone differences. Pretty good. So I don't know. Are there any questions or anything you'd like me to go into more in detail? Not that exciting, I guess, but
No,
you
it's
know.
all good, Mike. I'm really interested that you would end up in Kingman, frankly, of all places, and
Hmm.
delighted that you've done that. So, as a software developer, is it a project by project thing? You're not really part of a team. You don't have other people you're depending on to get this done. Is that
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
But
Well,
it's
I work with one other guy in my current company. Prior, it was mostly just me. I was independent. Really from the beginning, I've kind of been an independent developer, where each project was kind of, it was up to me to build it, design it, launch it, run it, fix it. Right now, it is a little bit more. There's a couple other guys that I work with. One's like administers the production environment. I work with one other developer, but for the most part, we check in once a day, maybe for an hour. In fact, I just got off a call with him just right before this, and which lasted about an hour. So we check in for about an hour. Sometimes we work together on things. Other times we just have, like the past couple of days, I've just been focused working on a particular project. There's not a lot of things we need to talk about and work on that. So maybe a little bit unique in most software development type positions because we are such a small company. We really only have two developers. Um, and it is just one product. We do utility billing and payments. So that is um, and we work on just that. So we do got a few applications that we continue to refine year after year after year and work on building them. That is really foundationally different than the consulting I did, where it was a brand new project with brand new, a lot of times it was the same people, but it was like brand new needs, brand new rules. And it was more of a, you build this tool to run for use by the company. For instance, one time I built an ordering portal for Sprint sales reps around the nation to sell these vehicle information systems that so it was like hooking up with Sprint and hooking up with this company called Geotab and building it up for everybody to log in and those kind of things. So those were very focused. It was like one thing. We would build it. It would take about generally a 2, 3 months. Then there'd be, you know, maybe a year of little small refinements and then maintenance over the next 5, 10 years. So that was kind of projects. This is much different where it's the same thing, the same rules, the same problems, very much focused on the same thing pretty much every day, payments and billing. So,
Mike, one of the questions we get from folks who work with maybe larger companies and larger teams is project tracking.
mhm.
Maybe not so much in your case, but in cases where, say, there's a hybrid team and the supervisors kind of maybe there's not that deep level of trust that you talked about how important it is to develop at the beginning, but the
Definitely.
supervisor's trying to track, okay, where are we progressing on project X, Y, or Z? Is there particular project tracking or communication tools that you
Oh,
use with
yeah,
with
we do. We use Jira for project bug tracking, work tracking. We just have one simple board. I have built some custom workflows in Jira for us to use that like move from step to step. So you can see, oh, hey, here's the releases we have in queued. Here's what I'm working on now. But even as a small company, and yeah, as you get into a bigger organization, that becomes more and more important. There's a variety of software track, at least in the software world, it's pretty much Git, and there's usually a bug tracker, and there's usually like check-ins. They call them daily stand-ups, where we kind of have stand-ups, but we have a little bit. Usually, they're not limited to the short period of time that larger corporations. When I was working as a project based on with these large organizations, and I understand working with large organizations, I kind of work on the periphery of all of my clients. I've worked with Sprint, um, worked with, there's a variety of union pension management firms. I worked with a lot of casinos. I've seen these larger organizations that have a lot of bureaucracy, and it is a little frustrating sometimes. You see how hard it is to get things done. Um, those I never really got involved into their core project tracking, that kind of stuff. I would just be more reporting to a VP or whoever the manager was that was managing the project that I was on. I would send them an emails and then I would send them a link to here's the application running right now. Test it out, see what you like about it. And maybe just a quick update of, hey, it's looking like, maybe next week I'll have this particular feature done, ready to go. Just rough ideas of that. I've always worked in a more iterative, like free-flowing manner. It's not really formalized projects. Software, especially like this kind of software, it's hard to. It's not worth the cost of really a formal upfront planning. You end up spending more on planning than you do actually building it. So usually just build it, get it done as fast as you can, and report in and have a little bit more communication. But even as a small organization, we can't remember everything. We need project tracking. We do use Jira. I always look around. I want a better something, but it's the best of the worst options. None of them are great. I always like to say that with Jira, it's not the everyone hates it in the software industry generally, but it's the workflow that's in there. That's why I built some custom workflows, make it a little simpler. It's kind of used as a tool to, as an impressive tool a little bit in a lot of companies, I think. Oh, did you get this many story points done this week? We're, keeping you up to that. It's hard to measure software too. That's one of the big problems is it's almost impossible to measure really productivity in software other than just is something running and working. And if you're in a big team, it's hard to tell where that comes from and coordinate. So also I see in the world of AI, teams should probably get a lot smaller, I think. I think we're going to see that. So small, light project tracking. Yeah.
What about AI? What do you see happening there?
Um, in my personal use, I've seen some pretty incredible things. It wasn't until about 6 months ago that the tooling around it, I tried it over the past year or two. I follow it, of course, I follow it really closely. It's super interesting to me, and I'm, always brainstorming ideas of how it might be applied to what can we do new now. As far as building like my daily work in software, I find there's times when I'm like, oh wow, that's amazing. Just yesterday, it found a little mistype that I had made in some code, and I'm like, holy smokes, how did it find that? But it did. But at the same time, it gives you this answer that's actually 100% wrong. So it's like
Yeah.
it's a hot and a cold thing. And it's almost like you've got to be able to verify what's coming out of it, because a lot of times it will be false. Like a good, not all the time, but at other times it's like it like earlier this about a month or two ago, I was working on a what's called a change feed that comes out changes that come out of a database, and I spent about 2 or 3 hours building a proof of concept of getting this thing working. And then I was like, okay, let me fire up the old AI code thing and see what happens. Boom. There were a few little issues, but at like 10 minutes it was done. I was like, wow. So there are times where it's like if it's something that's common, that it's got a pattern to work off of, uh, repetitive type of things, like it can like I think the term I mentioned to you, Ron, was to me, this is industrialized knowledge work, where the last industrial revolution was physical industrialized knowledge work, physical work. This is knowledge work that's kind of industrialized. And but again, it can be wrong. Working in current ways we do things, I would almost say we're a very um, software is still artisanal in the artisanal phase. It is me crafting the code. I've been doing that for 20 years, and AI, I think, is going to change how things are done. Like I was saying, lower quality, probably more of it, orders of magnitude cheaper and faster, hopefully. But it's going to require changes to the way things are done. I think it's going to apply to software. Maybe we're like on the leading edge. We've got a lot of, sorry about that. Let me turn my thing to this there. Somebody's trying to call me. Um, where's the list?
We're talking about AI and where it's
Yeah,
going.
yeah, we're
The and
um,
software.
yeah, software's on the leading edge of there's all kinds of training data available, and of course it's highly it's in that realm. But if there's good training data, you can actually do some pretty incredible things, and it's a yeah, it's pretty darn incredible. It's an amazing technology, can be abused, can be incredibly useful. I think it will profoundly change a lot of roles and jobs and stuff. And if I'm giving advice to young kids, I'm like dive in and embrace it as much as possible, and embrace the changes that it might allow you, that might enable. And then I think I also mentioned this, Ron, before. Like when I got into software development, there's different programming languages, and rather than choosing a programming language that had been around a long time, I chose a brand new programming language, and I also chose to work on web, building websites, because there's you can build like classic applications for Windows machines, and I chose to go web, and I chose to do C sharp, which was just a brand new language at that time. And now throughout my career, I'm always the most senior person with that language stack. So if you're young, choose something new. You're always going to be the most experienced with it, and you're like, so whenever someone is looking at your job, at your your resume, 20 10 years down the line, well, you're going to be the senior person in that particular technology. I guess if that technology works out also. But AI and this kind of new methods of working that it enables, I think jump on it, go for it full speed. It's going to change things for sure. There's going to be bumpy, but I would say, and I'm going full speed into it as well. Like I think it's kind of exciting. So, and it will change, is changing software, how it's done. So,
It's quite fascinating. My experience would totally support what you said. It's the speed that it produces a simple product. AI produces is amazing to me. I mean, you get instant results. The results are not perfect, and sometimes they're very wrong. But man, it
yeah.
it gets product to you quickly. Um, um, Anyone is welcome to put a chat question or unmute, and feel free to ask a question if you want to pose a question to Mike. I am a little curious, Mike, about software development. I mean, are 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 you on an island? Are there other remote workers doing software development around Kansas or the region?
I have not met anyone here in Kingman. Um, I do go to a some tech meetups in Wichita, and there's a few other, not a large number, but absolutely. In fact, probably software development is probably one of the most remote friendly work roles or job roles. Um, so there are. Um, I go to a place called Groover Labs in Wichita, and I'm a member there, and I'll go in a couple times a month just to meet up with other people. They are great. There's not a huge software engineering community that I'm familiar with. The developer groups are kind of small, especially compared to Arizona, Phoenix. So it's yeah, there's not many people around here. I mean, I'm kind of in a unique place. I ended up finding Kingman just through personal reasons, and family and stuff like that. But I want to see more of it, because it's a good job. It's a great job, and it's going to change, but it's still there's going to, in fact, there'll probably be more software work in the future. Good old Jevons paradox, right? Cheaper it gets, the more people want it. So I was very fearful of my career being obsoleted in early 2000s by India. That was a huge concern. Everyone was, well, all the software developers are getting outsourced to India.
Yep.
As it actually turned out, I got more work. Almost probably one third of my projects were failed overseas projects, where there would be some VP at a company who was in real trouble. Their project had stalled. They couldn't get the overseas vendors to respond to them. They had given them lots of money and nothing was working. And they're like, help me. And it was like, and then once you could do it and prove you could do it, then they're like, you're golden. Okay. Now, like, they're happier than, to give you as much work as possible. So I think going to be a lot of really similar. Like I think people are going to start a lot of projects with AI, prove out a lot of things. but a lot of them won't work. They'll get bigger and more complicated, and they'll require human developers. So, but yeah, and as far as a career, remote software work for rural Kansas to me seems like, wow, perfect match. Like you're central in the time zones. You can work East Coast, West Coast without really any issues. Cheap cost of living. It allow younger software devs, if they're, we can make some of them, if we create them, could allow them to really earn a good salary, have live in a nice small town. Um, and because there's very few jobs here in town that are actually on site. Like there's a couple employers, but they don't pay well and they're tough jobs and they're you know, so yeah.
So the Wichita, was it Groover Labs?
Groover Labs. Yeah.
Groover Labs. Okay, good to
Yeah.
know. You touched on time zone. I want to ask you about that too. So your work spans the continental U.S. Do you deal with overseas folks, and is
Not
there any?
anymore. I have in the past. During my consulting years, I did try to outsource overseas, and even me as a developer overseeing projects and stuff, it never was successful. It ended up taking me more time to oversee the project overseas and trying to get developers to do stuff overseas. And the product was always subpar quality. Eventually, I gave up. I tried it. I was like, oh, this would be perfect. I was going to start a consulting firm, but uh, problem in software is communication of what needs to be built and translating that into actual real solutions. And that's something very difficult to do um, across cultures and especially across time zones. So I don't, right now, we're fully in the US. So time zones aren't really an issue. But in the past, any type of whenever I had to work with overseas, I was always up at 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night, and it was never fun working those hours. And I also found it very difficult, cross-cultural communication of what the problem is. So, if anything, now with AI, um, that sort of low-level paint by number type of work, cookie cutter type of work that you might want done, you might go overseas to get done, almost becomes un unnecessary if you could get AI to do it, and then it's so. Um, Yeah, I would avoid especially trying to compete with overseas people. So also, just, mm, I mean, so yeah, and it's really nice having uh, regular work hours and healthy work hours, and you, yeah.
I remember being told, just be aware of the time zone differences if you are spanning that. And I still get messed up trying to
Oh,
keep
it's
straight
terrible.
the time zone differences. But
If
there are programs too. Obviously, there's an app for that. I mean, there's ways to
Yeah,
you can check it
keep it
easily.
track. I would say that if you are trying to work with companies or with resources overseas, I would pick South America, Central America, if I was trying to work with that, because then you're in roughly the same time zone. You're not in opposite. It is very difficult because either they have to be staying up all night or you have to be staying up all night. And it being the Philippines, because I've actually I've worked with Philippines, I've worked with India, I've worked with China, and all of them were the time zones were very different, and also the cultural issues of communication of specs and stuff. And that's what, like, so I was going back to saying, like, the kind of work that I've always typically done, it's not really been upfront specified. And I've almost believe it's almost impossible to really upfront specify software because you learn as you go and you want to adapt, change what you learn. So coming up with a 75-page document that describes what you want, unless you've done it a few times, um, you don't know what you want. And you'll learn and adapt and change. And there's trade-offs to be made um, with what you want to do. So,
There's a question in the chat, Mike, from Deborah, and you said right up front the importance of building trust. That that's kind of what got you started. Once you establish that trust with the company, then the doors would open. The question is, once you are remote, what are some ways you continue to build that trust?
I guess like currently I check in every day. I let them know I'm getting started and I let them know when I'm leaving at the end of the day so they know I'm actually there. Try to be responsive to questions, and just make sure that I focus and work. Like, because it's really easy when you're at home for you to get distracted by your dog or by other things and get pulled away for time. So, yeah, I mean, really taking the job a little bit seriously and saying, okay, I'm actually going to sit down, going to close my door, I'm going to work. Try to keep, because if you've got a dogs or a family or, like occasionally visitors are here, and yeah, it's real easy to get pulled away, and then boom, there goes a couple hours of the day, and they're going to be wondering like, what are you doing? So just staying responsive to questions, regular calls, video calls like Google Meet or Zoom, like huge. Uh, like, they see your face, talk back and forth. So, regular calls, try to touch base, if not daily, but at least many times every week for, and just shooting the breeze a little bit, with people. In the consulting days, it was just about making sure you produce the product on time, getting the project done so it doesn't go over. Uh, and that involved a lot of times I would be work very long days. I'd work 12 hours a day for, a week, but then I'd have the project done and I'd have a bunch of downtime after that. So, um, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, just regular communication, regular check-ins, and make sure you get done what you need to get done, and don't let it slide. So,
I hear you saying responsiveness is part of it, but the other thing is simply track record. I mean, once
mhm.
you've proven you can do the job and they recognize that, then they can count on you and they worry about other things. Is there such a thing as continuously checking in and overdoing that? I think that's the gist of Deborah's last question there.
Yeah. Um, I'm, I mean, my current company is very small, and it, it it's not really traditional managers. Like, they're actually working in the company and they have kids, and they are in and out far more than me. So, uh, yeah, I don't think I mean, I do definitely each day, start of the day, I try to just check in and say good morning. I'm usually the first one to do that. Um, but, uh, yeah, as far as during the course of the day, I'll just try to be responsive to when there's questions, or, occasionally post something. Also have a chat room called Break Room, where there's some little interesting news story, post that in there. But, um, yeah, I guess it's a relaxed enough atmosphere. At least it's not a very corporate atmosphere, which I've worked in the very corporate atmospheres. That's not what this company is about. So that might be part of, like, as you're judging where you want to try to get a job, look at their culture and how, because some companies are brutal. They really are, right? Um, I've seen them, and, you might just want to avoid those if that doesn't fit in, with, your own personality. Yeah, I don't know about
Yeah.
continuously checking in. I mean, maybe a quick update at the end of the day. Most of my work is just over the course of the day, but to say, hey, heading out for the day, here's where my current status is. Maybe that might help. So, but yeah, like I said, I don't have the meddling manager as much going
Right.
on, running things through Jira. In fact, I'm the one who set up Jira, and I'm the one who keeps it for keeping track of everything. So, it's not being used as a tool to make sure that I'm working. So it's a little different, at least at this company. So that's why I'm so
Gotcha.
comfortable being here. Yeah, I really like it.
You mentioned break room. That's interesting. One of the programs we work with, that Slack is
Hmm.
they use Slack all the time. I think it's a main communication tool, but they have different channels, and
Hmm.
there's a channel where you can post, here's my kid's picture on the first day of school, and here's my favorite cat or whatever.
Yeah.
But then the other channels are targeted to different projects and different needs, and
Yeah.
um, I thought that was a pretty good way to go.
Yeah, we're the
What
same way. We have a couple different targeted channels. One for dev work. We have a break room. We have a general. Those are the three I really got on. So,
One other thing I wanted to ask, and it's about youth and those future software developers potentially. We've talked about STEM in schools and in 4-H, and how do we engage youth and technology. Patsy's taken the lead on some of those projects. Is the any thoughts on how to further reach out to, I don't know, high school youth, or what we might do to further cultivate that technology, remote or otherwise, in the future?
Um, well, I think just teaching kids some basics, right? And maybe giving them like how to how to write a hello world in Python or some HTML. And one of the other things is a lot of the school stuff doesn't really teach you software development practices. It's largely self-learned. It's also kind of tough because the software workflows and stuff change very rapidly. So by the time you develop some curriculum, it could really be out of date, right? Like the way I do things now is totally different than it was, a few years ago. Very different. It's been a really a constant state of flux throughout my career, and you kind of have to run with that. So okay, so getting kids, I thought about doing like little hey, come bring your laptop and I'll teach you how to program HTML type of things in the city in Kingman. Um, I'd also thought now I don't know if like this is some sort of I don't know if you're familiar with like recruitment firms. Like there's a lot of them usually in the big cities, but I was wondering if maybe there could be one that focused on remote software work that could dole jobs out to rural Kansas. I was thinking, central location, cheap cost of living, as long as you could get developers that were could work. It could be like you could build like a remote software dev house, um, and work on those kind of projects. But getting kids maybe in school, making it cool. I don't think kids realize how good software work is. They think, oh, you're a nerd. Oh, you're only with computers, but they don't realize you end up communicating with people way, way more. It is about problem solving, trade-off analysis, and then actual implementation. It's it's intricate. It is hard. That's a reason it's paid well, is because it's very difficult to get stuff working, but you just have to keep working at it. Everything every kid needs to know is available totally free. It just takes time and effort. And you don't, college does not prepare you for actual software work, I don't think. And I went to a trade school to learn software, and they actually did a pretty good job, I thought. They taught me a lot of good basics, but that was back in the dot-com boom, and they went out of business and everything. But it's hard to develop actual like uh, the working, type of software stuff. So maybe it needs to be turned into more of a trade, like electricians, apprentices type of things, or plumbing apprentices, maybe. But AI is now changing everything too. So uh, if anything, everybody's saying, well, the junior software developers are going away, and nobody will be able to do the jobs, and that is true. Um, I think the key what AI does is it lets people who know how to use it and that can verify it, they can do a lot more. But at the same time, that means everybody's going to stop being a software developer, just like in the early 2000s. So that's why there was such a huge shortage of developers in the 2000 teens. It was because nobody started being a developer because there was a dot-com crash and India was going to take our gerbs. And um, and then I mean, like, it's incredible the kind of money you can make and how engrossing the work is, and it's not hard. And I mean, it is hard mentally and intricate, but I mean, when you compare it to other careers, it's like, I mean, all you need is a computer and you can sit there and make really good money. And yeah, I don't fear there's always going to be more work, I think. Even though people are kind of a little bit of doom and gloom for software industry, I'm like, sounds exactly like India. India was going to take the jobs. And I'm telling you, like people are saying, AI is going to take the jobs. I'm like, it's going to change them, but there'll probably be a lot more jobs, and they'll probably be even higher paid this time because you'll be able to do more. So, and they're already very, very highly paid. So, um, yeah, I would fear for young kids like choosing uh, things that might be impacted by AI, going and investing, 100 to $200,000 in college with a particular career, and so you come out to be, a junior law intern, or these things that are like, oh man, it looks like AI is gonna just, and then you've got all that debt, and you're trying to, I mean, maybe it can make you better, but at the same time, look at how it might apply to whatever it is career you're working on, and um, maybe focus your time uh, teaching yourself a few things, because you can literally learn everything you need without having to go a couple $100,000 into debt to um, try to get started.
Well, being a lifelong learner is a key message, I think, to our young people, because the amount of change, it's amazing what you've seen and what I've seen, and it accelerates.
And yeah, really, like, I mean, I can see three fairly, maybe four huge distinct generations of technological change. There was the way software was built in the 90s, which then totally changed to the way software was built for the web, which then really there was there was a lot of churn in how user interfaces were built and all this kind of stuff in the teens. And then now I mean, just in the past 6 months, like I'm looking at a completely different workflow than what I used a couple of years ago. And I'm also using different tools. And so, yeah, it just ride embrace the change, try to be on the leading edge of it, try to figure out how to use it. Um, if you want to because yeah, it's going to change. And so, especially technology things, I think maybe AI now is going to bleed over a lot more into other realms of jobs and stuff. Yeah, it is. Yeah, the skills I worked on to build 10 years ago, are the half-life of them is, maybe 10 or 20% of the tool set that I used back then. I don't use any of it anymore. And it's like, that's unfortunate, but I think it's also at least software engineering, its position as a trade or a career or profession, it's still in the very early stages. It's not like being a doctor or being a lawyer or being one of these much or building construction and stuff. Those have been around thousands of years, and yes, there will be some changes. There will be some technical changes, but for the most part, they're the same. Largely, where there's a far greater churn as we learn and technology and these technology advances happen. So,
Well, and I've seen research that refers to knowledge workers. Remote work and for knowledge workers is a perfect fit, and so I think that's exciting about the future. Any other questions from anyone or comments? Looks like we're good. Mike, thanks for a glimpse into a really fascinating world. Software development and opportunity to do that remotely. So I recall the story you were visiting Kingman some years ago, and then when the time came to leave Phoenix, you remembered that and chose to come to Kingman, which is wonderful. We're thrilled that you're in Kansas,
yeah, I'm
and
very bullish on the Midwest. Having grown up on the West Coast, and it has largely had economic, you know, been very successful economically, especially California. Um, but I think the Midwest, I'm bullish on the Midwest, so in general.
well, we appreciate that. Really appreciate the interesting discussion today. Get to a virtual round of applause here, and uh, thank you for your presentation and your good work in Kansas. So really appreciate it, Mike, and appreciate all you're doing.
No problem. Thank you very much.
Thanks. A reminder. Wow, look at that and all that applause. A reminder. September 10 is our next Remote Work Wednesday. We'll be hearing from Cody Beasley, who is part of a startup company that is entirely remote, and so we look forward to hearing some tips for him. So we look forward to seeing you in September. For now, thanks everyone for joining us. Have a wonderful Remote Work Wednesday. Good afternoon. Thanks, Mike. Interesting stuff. Really interesting.
Okay.